Okay, well, welcome everyone. My name is Carrie, and I am a recruitment services officer with the Ministry of Immigration and Career Training. And today I'm going to share some of the changes that have been made to OASIS and the SINP process to help make the CAP sector intakes better for both employers and candidates. There will be an opportunity for questions when I'm finished, but please note that we will not be answering questions about specific applications or scenarios. If you require help with these types of questions, you can definitely reach out to us. So during the last two intake periods, March 2nd and May 4th, the overwhelming demand, particularly in accommodations and food services, caused the OASIS system to experience some issues, such as slow system response times, failed submissions, and difficulty accessing the system. To mitigate this, we are making targeted adjustments to the Saskatchewan Immigrant Nominee Program's capped sector intake process. And we have made these changes to help reduce the number of submissions, to prevent further OASIS system issues, and to help maintain fairness and predictability for employers. Capped sectors include trucking, accommodations, retail, and food services. So if your business falls in one of these sectors, you are in the right place today. To help reduce the number of submissions, you can now apply for up to 3 candidates per EPA. So, as long as the position knock, location, and wage are the same, you can apply for up to 3 candidates. Like before, you must enter the candidate information during submission. All other requirements remain the same, such as you can only apply for an existing employee with 6 months remaining on their work permit, and you must meet the median wage for the occupation. You can find knock information, including the median wage for your region, by visiting the Government of Canada Job Bank. When submitting an EPA, employers must demonstrate that the position meets the median wage and provide 3 recent pay stubs. And at least one of those pay stubs must clearly reflect the wage stated in the EPA. For example, if an employee recently received a raise to meet the median wage, supporting pay stubs must show that the new wage has already been in effect. Increasing wages at the same time as submitting an EPA without prior pay stub evidence will result in the application being deemed ineligible. To prevent further OASIS system issues, we are splitting and staggering intake dates and times. The intake window opens at 8:30 a.m. on July 6th for trucking, so that is NAICS 48 to 49, and retail NAICS 44 to 45. The intake window opens for accommodations, NAICS 721, on July 6th at 12:30. The intake window opens for food services, NAICS 722 on July 7th at 12:30 p.m. The overall 2026 SINP allocations remain the same, with trucking taking 5%, retail taking 5%, and accommodations and food services taking 15% combined. For this intake, you may notice that fewer positions are available. This reflects the gradual use of the annual nomination allocations as we move closer to the end of the year. And remember, you can only apply during your sector date and time. So check your North American Industry Classification System, NAIC. EPAs submitted outside of the designated intake window will be deemed ineligible. So make sure you apply during your window. To help maintain fairness and predictability for employers, we are limiting each user's login to one active session, which means that you cannot use the same login on more than one device. Having more than one person in OASIS under the same account caused most of the disruption last intake, so we are limiting access to ensure that everyone gets a fair chance. Employers must provide complete and accurate information on the EPA, or else it will be made ineligible. You can still preload your EPAs and save them in OASIS, then just click Submit when the window opens. Lawyers and third parties will still need to access the employer's account through the employer's credentials. We'd like to draw your attention to some recent updates to the EPA form. If you have already preloaded your EPAs for the upcoming intake, please ensure that you go back and make sure the necessary updates are in there and that they are ready for your intake. If you are unsure if you have the most recent version, you can always start a new EPA. Instead of entering in the candidate information in fields, we have now gone back to the uploads for this section to accommodate more than one candidate per EPA. So please update all the required documents for all of the candidates, including work permits and maintain status letters if applicable, and pay stubs. The job offer details will still be entered in the fields, but we have included drop downs for overtime and vacation pay to help you fill these in. Choose the situation that best reflects your policy for overtime and vacation. Once again, any EPAs that were preloaded prior to these changes will need to be reviewed and updated. Another great update in OASIS is duplicate an existing EPA. The employer can choose a previous EPA from within the last year and duplicate to create a new EPA. This transfers over the job title, the NOC, full-time position, hours of operation, shifts, wage, union information, job location, physical address, number of employees, staffing table, and job offer information. If you change your mind, you can easily cancel the duplicate. When an EPA is approved, OASIS sends out a letter to the employer with details on the decision. And this is a sample of the email. It lets the employer know that they must log in to view the EPA decision. Once the EPA has been approved, please discuss the job details and next steps with your candidate so that you are both on the same page. Candidate validation and the SINP. Once the EPA is approved, the status changes to candidate invited. The candidate receives an invitation email with job offer information, deadlines, and details on how to proceed. Please note the deadline to validate and the deadline to submit in the email. The candidate has 10 calendar days to validate the job offer details and the remaining days to complete and submit their SINP application. The candidate has 60 calendar days total to apply to the SINP. If they miss the deadline, the EPA will be deemed ineligible or invalid. Once the candidate logs into OASIS, they will go to Part 1 eligibility record. They must enter the employer ID and EPA ID. This will be found in their email. The system will verify this information, including their date of birth. If all the information matches, selecting View Job Offer will show the job offer information in the gray box. Click Save. This is to verify and connect the candidate to the APA. In Part 2, Job Offer Record, the candidate will fill in the offer date, employer ID, and EPA number. Then they will click View Job Offer. This opens up the gray box with the job details. They need to review these and make sure they align with the actual work and pay. If they are satisfied that this is correct, then they can click on Validate Job Offer. And then there's only one more step left. Once they validate the job offer, they must upload a copy of the signed job offer letter. It must include all of the job offer details. Once this has been uploaded, click Save. They have now successfully validated the job offer in OASIS. Remember, this needs to be done within the first 10 calendar days of receiving the email invitation. If they wish to stop at this stage and continue to work on an application at a later date, they may do that, but they just need to remember to keep saving their work as they go through the process. They now have the remaining days within the 60-day period to complete their full application and submit to the SINP. For example, if they validated on day 5, they now have 55 calendar days to complete the full application. Here are some things you should know. For submitting an EPA, question 1 is, can I ask for a second review on an EPA ineligible decision? Second reviews are only for capped sector employers, and it is only on administrative error. For example, if submitted attachments to the EPA were overlooked by SINP staff, something like this may warrant a second review. Please note that if we are conducting a second review, you cannot change or add anything to the original EPA. Also, something like a candidate failing to validate within 10 days, that would not qualify for a second review. Question 2. Will each candidate get their own 60-day time frame, even if the EPA has multiple candidates? Yes. Remember, the journey is with each candidate, not the EPA. For example, on an EPA with multiple candidates, one might validate after 2 days, then they have 58 more calendar days to submit their SINP application. Another person might validate after 8 days, then they have 52 calendar days. Question 3. Can the employer cut and paste duties from the NOC into the EPA? The answer is please do not copy and paste duties from the NOC. They must be in your own words, like from your job description. If my employee has more than one work permit, which one do I upload? Always upload the most up-to-date work permit. If the work permit has expired and your candidate is on maintained status, then upload both the original work permit and the maintained status letter. What do I do if the intake fails quickly and I didn't get my EPA, but my employee has an expiring work permit? If the EPA intake reaches capacity before you're able to submit, you will need to wait until the next intake period to apply. When intake reopens, you may submit the EPA at that time. To submit an employer position assessment, SINP requires proof of maintained status, a letter from IRCC confirming receipt of the submission for a new permit or extension, and the original work permit associated with that maintained status. They must apply to extend their work permit before it expires. Once they have applied to IRCC for the extension, they're authorized to keep working under the same conditions as their original permit until IRCC makes a decision on their application. For more information on maintain implied status, please visit IRCC. What information needs to be on the job offer letter? So this is the letter that you give your employees so they can upload it into OASIS for their SINP application. The job offer letter must include the company's contact information, so their address, contact name, contact number, and position of your authorized person. Must indicate if the position is permanent, full-time, or a minimum 2-year term. If the position is a term, it must be for at least 2 full years at the time of EPA submission. For example, if you have an employee who began a 2-year term 6 months ago, the job offer letter submitted with the EPA must reflect a new 2-year term starting from the EPA submission date, not the original start date. So it can't be for a year and a half, it has to be for another full 2 years. It needs to indicate the job title and a detailed description of duties and responsibilities. And again, ensure the duties align with the NOC, but are not copied from the NOC. And it must include the wage. It must include the vacation allotment, stat pay, and overtime policy as per Saskatchewan employment standards. And it must be signed by the employer and the employee. Please provide that to your candidate. Here are some questions about the capped intake. Can we log into the same account on 2 different devices and submit at the same time? I just want to make sure that this is completely clear. We are limiting each user's login to 1 active session, which means that you cannot use the same login on more than 1 device. As per our terms and conditions, only the people listed on your certificate of registration or your core may access your account and submit applications on behalf of the employer. EPAs are submitted through the authorization email on the account, so only 1 submission at a time. Question 2. Can I put in a blank document in the EPA if I don't have it ready, then replace it later? Employers are required to provide complete and accurate information. So EPAs containing incomplete or inaccurate information will be deemed ineligible. So please don't do that. I can't find the create EPA button on the home page. The EPA must be created by the authorized user that is associated with the authorized email on the core. If you can't see this button, then you will need to find out what the authorization login is from the person on the core. Number 4, should I just make a new EPA or can I use an old one? As I mentioned before, there have been many changes to OASIS since April. So if you have an old EPA in the system, I would like to encourage you to create a new one. This will ensure that all the fields and uploads are the most up to date, and it will help avoid any error messages when you try to submit. Number 5, how do I know the EPA was accepted? Once you click submit, a green banner, like you can see on the screen, will confirm that your EPA has been submitted for review. You will also receive a success notification email at 5 p.m. that day, letting you know that it has been submitted. Sometimes the status update takes a few hours to appear in OASIS, so continue refreshing or check back later. And number 6, what does bad gateway mean? Bad gateway means that there is high activity in OASIS. If you get this message, refresh the page and try submitting again. If it continues to be a problem, please email us and include screenshots of the issue along with your EPA number and employer number. These will be reviewed, but please note that a review does not guarantee an opportunity to apply. Our office can be very busy on intake days, and we will not be able to confirm your EPA. You will receive an email at 5 p.m. that day confirming that your EPA has been submitted, like I mentioned before. So please do not call our office to confirm until 24 hours had passed. If you get the green banner, then you should be okay. As demand is expected to be high and intake will fill within minutes, employers should ensure all required information is complete and ready for submission in advance. Employers are required to provide complete and accurate information. EPAs containing incomplete or inaccurate information may be deemed ineligible. Our team has made all the necessary changes to OASIS to ensure that you can add all the required information the first time. So please make sure you fill it all in correctly. When in doubt, add additional documents to support your application. If you feel like you're missing something, just add it in just in case. Again, if you experience technical difficulties during the intake window, please email us at employerservices@gov.sk.ca and include screenshots of the issue along with your EPA number and employer number. Once the allocation has been met, it will let you know it was full and the window is closed when you try to submit. I would also really like to encourage you to work closely with your candidates to ensure you are both aligned on job details and expectations. They may need support when completing their SINP application, and your guidance can help ensure accuracy and a successful submission. I hope I answered a lot of the questions that you had, but now I'm going to open it up for questions, and they will be moderated by our experts here at the SINP. So thank you for your time.
Thanks everybody for coming out to the session today. If you do have any questions, please place them in the Q&A section. If there are multiple of the same question or very similar questions, we likely will not answer every single one, but we will respond to inquiries. The first one is in regards to understanding how to add 3 candidates. I believe that was covered here as part of the presentation, but you will notice once you've attached all the documents on the bottom of the first step, there will be a spot to add the individual's name first, last, middle, if applicable, as well as date of birth and their email. There'll be an add button there so that you can add those additional boxes to fill in for the other individuals. Next question is in regards to some concerns related to the limitations on the SINP for the cap sectors these years. While we cannot provide any advice on how to manage or operate your business, there are experts with the ministry that may be able to help you develop recruitment strategies or retention strategies, maybe assist with finding domestic labor pools. I would recommend you reach out to the email of saskjobs@gov.sk.ca. That's saskjobs@gov.sk.ca. All right, now I got a few more coming in here, so it's going to take me a moment here to get to them. All right. I will mention that we're not going to respond to any inquiries related to a specific EPA. If you do have questions related to a specific EPA or SINP application, please reach out to us at our general phone line or by email. So there is a inquiry. I'm not going to read it off because it's just very lengthy in regards to what the SIP is doing to ensure that the portal is functioning properly during intakes. We are actively working with our vendor and taking multiple steps to block incoming bot traffic, as well as reduce the number of active users on OASIS at the time of the intake. It's partially why we've broken down the intakes by sector and split the times up in order to put greater space and less demand on the system during those times. Next question is if they have an EPA that is in process from the previous window that is not approved or denied prior to the next intake, do you need to reapply on July 6th? While we can't stop you from applying, if you do have an EPA that's currently under assessment, I would wait until you receive the decision on that one prior to making any new applications. All right, we got some more questions coming in here. The next question is how many slots are for food service during this intake? You can see on the website each sector has their information listed. If you look at the processing times page, it will have the information for the time and the number of slots being opened up on this intake. The number of intake slots per sector is going to be based on where we are currently in the nominations for those sectors, but we are intending to have slots open in each one of the intakes for each sector. Next question is, my representative is in Calgary. Can you tell me the time that the food sector will open in Mountain Time? All of our times are posted in Central Standard Time. Your representative in Calgary will need to ensure that they do the conversion. Next question is, I wonder if I can log in advance on the day of online registrations, or if I should log in exactly at 12:30. If you start logging in at exactly the time that an intake opens, it will likely be full prior to your ability to have reached your pending EPAs and attempted to submit. I would log in a few minutes ahead of time. What is the current wait time for review of submitted EPAs? Our targeted processing time is 6 weeks, though capped sector EPAs from the last intake are taking a little longer than that. Next question is, what immigration pathways are available for individuals outside Canada who wish to move to Saskatchewan? The SINP is available if the employer is in a priority or non-priority sector. There is no immigration pathway through the SIMP in a capped sector. Federally, they can also look at accessing the express entry categories. There may also be community-based immigration pathways depending on where they're looking to relocate to. Next question is, so I do understand that a new job offer for a minimum of 2 years employment has to be submitted to this intake, not the original offer, which was almost 2 years ago, and the position is now permanent and the employee is full-time permanent already. So if the initial offer was for permanent full-time, a new offer would not be required. If the position was for a stated duration or a term, then depending on how much time is remaining on that term, a new offer of employment would be required in order to meet that 2 years of validity at time of submission. Next question is, what if a worker has an expired work permit and tends to apply restoration after receiving an EPA and have no maintained status letter? Can we still apply for them? The answer is no. The candidate in a CAP sector must be on a valid work permit or valid maintained status. If they have entered a restoration period or no longer have any form of valid status. Also, visitor record is not accepted as status for the purpose of an EPA. They will not be eligible to have an EPA. Also, if the individual loses their status after having received an EPA, but prior to receiving nomination, they will not be eligible to receive a nomination from the SINP. Next question is, when I created EPAs for my candidates, the only option was one candidate. I tried to make it two and a warning came up. If I want them on the same EPA, now, should I delete the current one and re-enter? This would be very dependent on when you attempted to add the second candidate. The update in the system did not deploy until about 7:30 p.m. on June 30th. So I would recommend that you log in now and see if you're able to add that additional candidate. If it's not working, then I would recommend creating a new EPA just to be sure. Next question is, there are still two more intakes for CAP sectors, but all the seats have been taken so far, I guess. How is the next intake going to work? Like, how many seats could still be there for the next intakes? The number of intake spots will be dependent on the quality of applications that are received, how many move forward for an improved EPA, and how many to nomination. We have a yearly number of nominations for each one of the capped sectors. Openings will vary depending on where we are in those totals, so I don't have a way of telling you what it will be like for the future intakes. Next question is the median wage requirement conditional? Like in some organizations have PR or citizen that is not working on median wage as well, then the applicant will be considered or not. So median wage is required for all applications. Certain employers may be able to qualify for a wage exemption. For example, if they have a collective bargaining agreement or official wage scale within the organization, or if there are situations where, for example, there's three Canadians or permanent residents working in the same location in the same occupation with the same level of experience, um, who are making less than median, but in none of these situations would be potentially approving below the low. Each one of those cases has to be assessed on its own merits during the assessment. So if you believe that you might be eligible for that, you could be paying below median, but it may not result in an approval of the EPA once it's assessed. Next question is, given the ongoing labor shortages in CAP sectors in Saskatchewan and the recent changes made by Ontario to its provincial nominee program, is the SINP considering increasing the quota for CAP sectors or making any changes to the current program to better support employers and eligible workers? At this time, there are no planned changes to the SINP. Next question is, on the website, it said after mid-year review, there may be some increases in the CAP sectors. Any updates on that? At this time, there are no increases to the CAP sectors, and we have received no indication from the federal government that our nomination allocation for the year will be increased. Next question is there any possibility that number of intakes will increase in September and November, especially if there are additional SIMP allocations from the IRCC? The number of intakes in the year will not increase. If there is an increase in allocation from the IRCC to the SIMP, that will result in an increase in the number of nominations allocated to the CAP sectors and then the number of EPAs that will be accepted. At this time, there's been no indication that we will receive any sort of increase to the nomination allocation. Okay, next question is, what if an employee has two jobs, has applied to the SINP with the other employer, but the application has not been processed yet? Can I process them for our business as well, or hold off until they hear back from the SINP? For the purpose of an EPA, you could submit a application for them, but they would have to choose which employer they're looking to receive the nomination from, and it may impact their ability to receive nomination. Raymond, anything you want to add to that one?
That's correct. So there's only one application at a time, even for dependent spouses. For if your principal applicant has read an application, if you're a dependent spouse on an application, you are considered a candidate. So it's important to weigh things and go for an application you think will better have a chances of you getting nominated and where you're actually working. Because as I mentioned, there's no two applications at the same time.
Perfect. Thank you. All right, next question is, how about the employers who register different locations in their core in one employer ID, and we need to submit the EPA for different locations with the same login credentials? Yes, regardless of the number of locations listed on your certificate or the number of locations that you operate, you will only be able to have one instance of OASIS for that employer ID. So based on that login information, uh, and you may only have individuals for the same location in the same occupation on the same EPA. If you're operating many locations and have many individuals that you're looking to support, you will need to prioritize which one you're looking to submit first, second, etc. Next question was how to get two different positions assessed if you can only log in once for the EPA process. You will have to prioritize which one to attempt to submit first, and if there is space after the first submission, you would be able to submit an additional one. Next question, does a spousal open work permit holder need median wage to apply for an agricultural EPA? Short answer is yes. So is the employer, the question is how to calculate the time for conditional approval for EPA approval of the three candidates at the same time with the same job title. If all three candidates are included on the same EPA, they will all receive the approval at the same time and will have the same date to validate as well as the same date to have the application submitted by. You don't need to calculate those times yourselves. They will be clearly stated on the EPA approval email. Next question is, my business is an inn accommodations, but the employer I'm applying for works as a cook. Could you please confirm which intake window I should submit the EPA during the accommodations or the food services? So this would depend on the NAIC that is registered on your account. If you're registered as an accommodations employer, you would submit during the accommodation window. If you're labeled as a food service employer, then you would submit during the food services window. Someone's asking if someone is waiting for an LMIA decision, but also wants to apply for the SINP, there's an option asking if they have an LMIA for this position. Do I say yes or no as we're in the queue, but it's not approved? So that question is in regards to if they hold a LMIA supported work permit, then we would need a copy of the LMIA for assessment purposes. So if they have yet to receive that LMIA, then you would answer no to that question. The next question is, we have multiple applicants from the same business, so would we be able to submit one application for the same position? Chances are you'll only be able to successfully submit one EPA during the intake times based on historically how quickly they have filled up. You may have up to 3 candidates on that EPA as long as they're in the same occupation and working in the same location. If you have multiple locations or multiple EPAs that you wish to submit, you will need to prioritize which EPA to submit, and I would recommend doing that based on when people's work permits are expiring. Next question is, I have only increased my pay one pay slip for applying for the EPA, and two is $16 per hour pay slip. Is it eligible? Please have your employer submit the documentation in the EPA. We will review it. I can't say whether or not the EPA will be eligible. We'll need to assess the complete application. Question of if the session was recorded. Yes, the session is being recorded. Next question, is a spousal open work permit eligible to apply SINP in the CAP sector? Yes, a spousal open work permit may be eligible to receive an EPA in a CAP sector. Follow-up question to that is, can the spousal open work permit apply under international skilled worker? Is median wage needed under CAP sector? So a spousal open work permit holder can apply to international skilled worker with an employment offer. They will need 6 months of work experience with the employer providing the EPA. Median wage requirements apply to all sectors, not just capped. Anything you want to add to that one, Raymond? Okay. Next question is, any chance that the food sector spots will survive till November, as my last 6 months of work permit starts from September? There will be spots available in the food service cap sector for the November intake. What the number is unknown at this time. Next question is why this intake is only 50 applications for food service sector before it was 240. A couple of reasons. One, it's based on how many of those previous submissions have resulted in nominations through the SINP. And two, we've split the food services and accommodation sectors into 2 intakes this time. So that 240 was for that complete sector, and now it's split between the 2 portions of the sector. As that is the largest sector with the most individuals attempting to access OASIS at the same time. Next question is, if you have multiple candidates against one position and 2 out of 3 have LMIA, does the SINP input window have provisions for submitting in this case? So in this case, with the LMIA question, you would answer yes, attach a copy of the relevant LMIA or LMIAs, depending on if it's different LMIAs for different folks. You can submit all 3 on the same EPA as long as everything else is the same other than just LMIA versus non-LMIA work permits. Next question is number of ratio is required for EPA in food sector? I believe what they're asking is there a ratio for supervisors to staff to be supervised in the food service sector? Yes, we'd be looking that each supervisor has a minimum of 2 full-time equivalent staff to supervise, and that they are spending the majority of their time doing that supervision. Next question is, what about the employees whose work permit is expiring in July of 26 and the count is more than 3 employees? You'll have to prioritize which employees you are going to put on which EPA, as it will only allow for a maximum of 3, and it's unlikely you will have the opportunity to submit multiple EPAs during the intake. So this question is in regards to vulnerable open work permit holders. If an individual is currently working for an employer under a valid vulnerable open work permit, how long does the employee need to work for that employer before the employer becomes eligible to apply for an EPA in support of the employee's immigration application? There is no difference for those requirements for a vulnerable open work permit holder. In order for the candidate to submit their application to the SINP, they'll need a minimum of 6 months and 780 hours working with that employer, and they'll need to have 6 months or less remaining on the work permit in order to be eligible for a EPA under a CAP sector. All right. If you do feel that your question has been skipped, I've been noticing a lot of duplications of the same type of question or the exact same question. If a very similar one has been addressed, yours will unlikely to be addressed, as we won't be repeating ourselves on those questions throughout this presentation. Guess we'll give it a couple more minutes to see if anything comes in here, but it looks like the questions have stopped for now. The most important takeaway from this session is that EPAs have been increased to allow for 3 individuals who can be in the same occupation in the same location, which will reduce the stress in submissions. It will cause the intake to go even faster. You will be restricted to 1 login, so we do recommend that prior to the EPA submission windows that you log in and ensure that the EPA is ready to go. One thing that you will find is that you cannot attach more names than the number that you've indicated that it is for submission, or the system will error. So please ensure you don't have any blank boxes or have not set the number of positions that you're submitting for to less than the number of candidates that you've attached. You will receive a warning message if you attempt to put that number above 3. And if you attempt to attach more names than the number of positions you've indicated that you're submitting for, you will also receive an error upon submission. Likely by the time you rectify that error, the window will have closed. So please ensure that everything on your documents is accurate.
And also, when in doubt, add as much information in as you can. There is an opportunity to add additional documents. So if you feel like there's something that we should know, please, and there's also fields as well, please add that information. And you can always call us if you have a question or email us.
A couple last questions here did pop up. One says, I'm on a 2-year open work permit, working holiday visa and working as a cook for 1 year. Am I eligible to apply to skilled worker with an existing work permit? Raymond, you see work permits are eligible under existing work permit?
Yes, that
Perfect.
specific one, yeah, international kind of experience class, that one, the type of work permit, they can qualify, given that they meet the conditions of any other requirements of the specific category.
All right, a couple more here came in. Do line cooks qualify for SINP applications or only supervisors? Cooks are eligible. We will be looking at the environment in which they are working, as they may be much better fit to the kitchen helper knock than to the cook knock, but that will be reviewed during the EPA review. Next question is, if an employee has 1-year experience in a CAP sector on an open work permit, but now he's on an LMIA closed work permit, he'll have to wait for 6 months near to expire in closed work permit? Yes, because they've transitioned onto that LMIA work permit, they will have to wait until there's 6 months or less remaining on that work permit. Next question is, can LMIA requirement for NOC 73300 truck drivers be replaced by a vulnerable open work permit? Yes, we would accept a vulnerable work permit in that case, as long as the employer shows proof that the individual is actually on a vulnerable work permit, as it shares the same case type with multiple other work permit types. So the system will prevent logging in from multiple devices. The question is, if we try to log in with the same login on 2 devices and by luck the EPA would be submitted, will it be accepted? The system will prevent multiple logins. Question is, QIT work permit holders can apply for any position, including Tier 4 and 5. Yes, QIT work permits are eligible to apply with a Tier 4 or 5 knock. Next question is low-wage LMIA will be approved in food sector? LMIAs are approved by the Government of Canada, not the Government of Saskatchewan. We cannot advise whether or not your low-wage LMIA submission will be accepted and approved. If you're applying for a current employee who is on a low-wage LMIA in the food sector, we are not constrained whether the LMIA was low-wage or high-wage, but median wage requirements will be still in place. So next question is, what happens if the employer submits the EPA after the intake window for a CAP sector has closed? Will they have to wait for the next intake window? They will be physically unable to submit an EPA once the CAP closes. Once the allocation is used up, the system automatically prevents the submission of additional EPAs. They would then have to wait for the next intake prior to being able to attempt to submit an EPA. So the next question is, we have 3 different divisions of completely different needed skilled workers. Can we have an EPA for each division and a max of 3 candidates for each? Assuming that you are in the capped sector, you can create as many EPAs as you wish in the system. It's just based on the number of EPAs that are allocated during this intake. It is unlikely you'd be able to submit multiple EPAs. If you're not in the cap sector, then you can submit anything at any time. Question was, what if we try to apply EPA and suddenly get an error? It really depends on what the error is. If it's an error with your EPA, you would need to fix that error prior to being able to attempt to submit again, but the window will likely have closed by then. If it's a system-related error, as mentioned in the presentation, please take screenshots and provide the EPA number and send them into our general line. Ensuring that the screenshots show the bottom left-hand corner of the application to show the login that was used for it. Question is, can I submit 2 EPAs with different positions in the same device in a capped sector? So you cannot submit multiple different occupations on the same EPA, and you will be limited to being logged in on one device. Next question is $17 median wage is good for apply for an EPA in the cap sector? The median wage information is based on the National Occupation Classification Code. I would recommend that you take a look on Job Bank's wage information for your occupation and location to determine whether or not that's an acceptable wage.
I'll also mention too with the Knox, when you go on there and you put in your location like Swift Current or Outlook, if it comes up with a region, that is the one you pay attention to. You can't choose between the region it chooses for you, even if it says a region that you don't think you're a part of, that is in the system. So choose that one. That will be your median wage instead of, you can't just default to Saskatchewan because you like it better, or Canada. You have to use that region.
Thanks, Harry. So next question, what is the number of requirements of employees working under a supervisor when applying for a supervisor position? Generally in the cap sectors, we're looking for each supervisor to supervise a minimum of 2 full-time equivalent staff. So that could be 2 full-timers, 1 full-timer and 2 part-timers, or 4 part-timers. And they do need to be scheduled in working with those individuals. If we have concerns about the supervision that's being performed, we're likely going to request that you provide copies of the shift schedule so we can see who's working with who, how often. If you want us to add that information up front, you can add shift schedules as part of your EPA submission.
Would really recommend that you do that up front.
Next question is it possible to apply if my work permit left 6 months and 2 weeks? No. It must be 6 months or less remaining on the work permit. If an employer submits an EPA for an individual who has more than 6 months remaining on their work permit, that EPA may be denied in its entirety, or at least that individual denied, and will likely be referred to our program compliance branch for misrepresentation. That referral would prevent submissions of any additional EPAs until that referral has been completed. And that was the last one in queue. Oh, just as I say that. Automotive and auto body potentially fall under the cap sector. It will depend on what NAIC is on the employer's account. There's a question here that says, if the EPA in the food sector is ineligible, then why SINP isn't asking for any additional documents and showing direct rejection? If a EPA does not meet program requirements, no additional documentation will be requested and a decision will be made. All information in the EPA, as per the terms and conditions, is to be complete and accurate. So if there are errors in what you submitted, we're not going to check in on every single little bit. As the employer, it is their responsibility to ensure they're submitting complete and accurate information. And if it's something like the wages, same median wage requirement was $21, and they're currently paying the employee $15.35 as being well below that median wage and below that median wage, we will just move to an ineligible decision because it does not qualify for the program. Next question. Every time I say we've got no more questions, more pop up. If other sector spots unused by end of year, any possibility that those spots will be used in cap sectors, that would be reviewed near to the end of the year to make a determination. It is unlikely we would ever leave any nominations just sitting on the table and unused for the year. If one of the cap sectors is not making use of its allocation, those will be reallocated to another cap sector. Is there consideration for open work permits issued under Israel, Iran, Hong Kong, and other country-based IRCC policies? Are they able to apply for any NOC, including Tier 4 and 5? At this time, only Kiewit's work permit holders are issued that ability. Those under other IRCC policies will still need to meet the tier requirements.
I'd just like to talk a little bit about the median wage, just to be really clear. In the past, employers have submitted for a capped and then at that moment decided that they were going to increase their wage at that point. You need to have had increased the wage before you submitted the EPA and have at least one pay stub that reflects that median wage or higher. You cannot make the decision with the EPA promising to increase the wage. We have to have evidence that you've already done it prior to submitting.
Thanks, Carrie. Next question is, if the work permit expires 7 days over the 6-month period, SINP has no grace period in the policy and the employer goes to compliance. Did I hear that right? Essentially, so the requirement is not 6 months and 1 day or 6 months and 2 days. The requirement is 6 months. The system also will enforce that 6-month requirement based on the work permit expiration date that is placed in there. So if you, as the employer, include an individual in the EPA with a work permit that is greater than the 6 months expiration, you have misrepresented the eligibility for the program and will be referred to the program compliance branch for that misrepresentation. When you submit an EPA as part of the terms and conditions, either yourself or your third party agrees that all information is complete and accurate. A work permit that has a greater than 6 months expiration, that would not be accurate. So you've agreed that everything is complete and accurate. You have then violated that complete and accuracy and will be referred to program compliance. The result will be up to program compliance as to what occurs for that misrepresentation, but you will not be eligible for submission or assessment of EPAs while with program compliance. Next question is, can we add 2 job occupations in one EPA? No, an EPA can only have a singular occupation. If you include multiple occupations in the one EPA, it is unlikely the EPA will be approved. Next question is, what if I got my EPA and before I get nominated, my work permit expires? What would the next process be? If you're in the CAP sector and you allow your work permit to expire or your maintained status gets refused, you would no longer be eligible for nomination through the SINP. You must notify the SINP immediately of that occurrence. Failure to do so may result in referral to the program compliance branch for misrepresentation, which could result in potential suspension from being able to use the program for, what is it, up to 5 years, Raymond?
It depends, like usually 2 to 5 years, depending on the case that was provided.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. I think at this point, we're going to say thank you very much again for your time today and wrap up.
Thanks everyone for joining us, and I hope that answered a lot of your questions. Again, if you have any questions, please reach out to us by email or by phone. And you can also go to our website at saskatchewan.ca/SINP. You can search for anything in there. All the information we shared with you is on there. There are also OASIS guides for the candidates and information for the employers to help you as well. So please check that out. And thank you so much for taking time out of your day to spend with us.